Hello and welcome to the Alpha Transform Tuesday webcast. I'm Dave McCormick, VP of Product Management here at Alpha Software, and I'm pleased to be joined by Sarah Mitchell, our Director of Customer Success. Last week, if you joined us, we were talking about the Internet of Things and got really geeky into some deep code and Node-RED and all kinds of fun things. This week, we're going back to a more beginner level one, but I still think you're going to find it enjoyable. Today, we are going to be talking about punch lists. So let me bring up my punch list graphic. There we go. There was a whole bunch of different graphics to use. That's the one I settled on. Anyway, a punch list. We've created our first punch list as a sample application here at Alpha. I don't know, maybe 3 or 4 years ago. It was first created. Our first one was done by Bob Moore, who is our VP of Mobility here at Alpha. And when I was talking to Bob when it came out, I said, it's a punch list. So that's like a checklist. And he goes, yeah, sort of. They're a little bit different. I said, okay, well, what's the difference between a punch list and a checklist? And he goes, think about a punch list as being a checklist that you make at the end or during an important milestone. So let's say you've got some sort of project going on. Let's say, for the sake of argument, it's a construction project, but it really could be anything that's got a beginning, middle, and end to it, that has got multiple pieces. You can use a punch list. So Bob actually has come from a background where he did fine home building. He was a general contractor as well as a programmer. He's a man of many talents. So for him, using punch list on the job was just second nature, which is why he thought of it as a great sample application. So with a punch list, a project manager, contractor, or whomever goes to review a project by walking around during its final stage or during some sort of milestone stage, and they keep track of what is missing, what has yet to be completed that should be complete, and also what is done possibly incorrectly or is sort of out of spec or out of variance compared to what the plan said. And then you'll make a note of those and you'll get in touch with the various people responsible. Now, punch lists are generally done on paper, although there is punch list software like the software we've developed, and they're super helpful even on paper, walking around keeping track of everything. But when you get to a punch list on a mobile device, you'll find that being able to take pictures and annotate them actually makes a huge deal, as well as the fact that you don't have to walk around with papers and do double entry of the things that you took notes of and all the other good things that you get from digitization. So we have a punch list template in Alpha Anywhere today that you can get to, and I would like to show that off because it's pretty cool. So here we are. When you first open up or you create a new instance of that punch list form, it starts out with what is the project, I would call it the project page. Let me see if I can get my mouse to work here. Oops. And the project page, here's the project photo. You have a photo, project name, address, and then we have the city and the state where the project is taken care of. You might want to add other things as well, contact information for the person on site. That might be some additions that you might want to make to this template. So here we took a picture of this. Typically, if this is like one room, you might take a picture of the room. If you're doing a whole building, you'll take a picture of the building. And that just identifies what particular project you're working on. Now, a punch list can then have the punch list items, or what we call tasks. And you get to those by clicking on this punch list button right here, which opens up a page. And I'll go ahead and do that. And our first task is called Finish the South Wall. So you'll see that this wall is not yet complete, and it's a task. And I could just end it here. And actually, if you were to scroll down, you can't because this is PowerPoint, but if you were to scroll down, you could then enter a second task or a third task. But sometimes tasks can be a little bit more complicated, a little bit more involved. And this task is one of them, because there's actually a couple things that we wanted to pay particular attention to when we're finishing the wall. So what we did was we added notes. So we just tapped on our notes button and we put in 2 notes. The first note, oops, sorry about that. The first note says to paint the edges of the access panel the same color as the wall color. So just make sure that when you're finishing the wall that these edges are painted the same way. That's what the person requested. And if you'll take a look at the note timestamp, you'll see that that's automatically, or it was automatically generated when we entered in either the photo or the note. There's also an option to do an audio recording, which is sometimes helpful if you've got a lot to say. But another thing that you might want to do is when you're in the note field is just simply use the the speech to text function that's built right into the mobile devices, which is probably a better way to do that. But we allowed you to do audio as well. Now, whenever you make a change to these, it checks to see if there's a timestamp set, and if there isn't, it updates it with the current date and time when the first piece of information was entered. I'm pointing that out to you now because I'm going to show you how that works a little bit later on. Now, we also have another note. This one says, add an outlet to comply with code. Yeah, outlets here have to be every 6 feet or so. I guess it's to avoid the use of extension cords that could pose a fire hazard. So you'll see what we got to do is we actually got to not only take a picture, but we got to draw this right on the phone and put a little lightning bolt there to indicate that that's where we would like our outlet to be added. Again, the timestamp was automatically done for us. Now, once those have been entered, and we go back to the front page, the project view, you'll see that we have these two little widgets down here that tell us some information here. I'm sorry that I didn't capture this one here, but it would have said sheetrock not started, description finished south wall. And these are just all the tests that need to be done. And this is like a little statistics box showing you things like which tasks have been completed, which ones are on hold, and which ones are yet to do, and what the total number of tasks are. So those were little widgets that we added to the front just to make it more useful to the person who's using the application, something that you really can't do on a paper form. And to do that, we used a little bit of TPL. Now, keep in mind, you could build an application like this one without using any TPL whatsoever, but we've added some TPL flourishes to make it just a little bit more polished, and also to make it sort of a good learning example for those of you who wish to use TPL in other projects, even if it's not the Punchlist project. So let's take a look and see how this was put together. Let's go ahead and do a live demo. So let me pop over here to Transform. I'm going to maximize this screen here. And you'll see I'm going to go here from the Home tab over to Designer. And in my list of form types, I have one called Punchlist, and that's this one here. I'm going to double click on it to open up all of the commands that make up this form. Now, if you look through, it's actually not that big a form. I think it was something like 50-something different things were put together on here to create that form, different commands. And some of them were just notes like this one, which tells you what this form is for. Breaking it down into sections, take a look up at here on sort of the project view. You'll see that we've put together where we've added a section start and a section end right here. And that refers to this area here. That's the picture of the photo. In our case, it was the picture of the whole room, as well as the project name, address, city, and state. Now, one of the first things you want to do, especially if you are not from the United States and you wanted to use this for your own, is you would probably want to edit that list of state stuff right here. In fact, you might want to call it province or something else besides state. And you can go ahead right here into list items, double click on that, and it will show you what the current choices are for all of the states here. It looks like we do have the Canadian provinces in here as well, but you may want to replace that with completely different data. All right, so that would be one thing that you might want to edit. You might also want to add a contact name maybe for the project, or a phone number if there's someone who's always at the facility. That might be a good thing to add, and you could add those right here into that section start and end. Okay, so that's the project level, and that's really the top level, but each project can have multiple punch list items, and so that's done down here. And you'll see, so a punch list item, since there are multiple, it goes into a data group. There's the data group start, and the data group end is probably down here somewhere. Well, actually, I don't have to find that right now. What I do want to show you, though, is that before you see any of the information in these data group items, there is an if statement, and that if statement can actually hide this task altogether. And the reason you would hide this task is because you're done with this task. And what you can do when you're using this form, and actually let me go back to the PowerPoint so that I can show it to you there, is when you have completed those are tasks, but if you've completed a task, for example, you can click close, and this will disappear from view. So it doesn't clutter your view. It's not something you have to deal with anymore. And then we go up another level. If I was done with the task itself, not just the note, I could hit close, and that would hide the entire task. So that was a little bit of TPL programming, or sorry, an if statement that we used just to make the interface cleaner. In other words, if you're already done with something, you can close it up and it'll disappear. You'll still see it in the statistics, but you just won't see it in the interface. All right, going back to Safari. Let's see if there's anything else here that's of interest in the TPL. Oh yeah, one thing that's of interest is that we added, or I'm sorry, in the commands. And so the close button was 1. One thing that's sort of interesting is that we have used a design that isn't just the standard 1 field per line. We've actually arranged it here in this box. And we did that using the layout. So let me click here, because that'll take me to that section of commands. And you'll see in the section start, under layout, they said that this is going to be a 2-column type of section. And each of these will use 1 column. So the photo uses 1 column, and the project name uses 1 column, and the address uses 1 column. And the city uses 1, and that uses 1 as well. But the thing is that it now has been laid out into a grid. And we've covered responsive design in previous ones as well, but I just wanted to show you that that's how that was done here. All right. I think we've talked about all of that. Let's go take a look at some of the coding that was added to here to make it work. So I'm going to go into Edit Custom Code. And again, this kind of form, I want to really emphasize this, doesn't need TPL to create a functioning punch list form that works well. The reason we've done it is to make it look a little bit nicer and also to show off some of the things that you can do in TPL. So just keep that in mind. Don't get scared off if you're not a coder, is what I'm trying to say, I guess. You'll see right here at the very beginning, there are a couple of things that were sort of interesting. One was the note on the timestamps. So if you look down here here are the items, these item notes. Remember, if you entered in a photo, a text, or a recording, it ended up setting the timestamp. And it did this using a clever way. On the onChanged event for this new photo, in other words, whenever the photo is changed, it's going to run this piece of code. I'm going to click here where it says changed. And what it runs is it just runs this function, which I know is very tiny. Let me just blow that up. At least 2 clicks, maybe 3. Hope I didn't go too far. All right. And that function, if we go into all blocks of code, is down here into set timestamp. And all it does is it checks to see if the timestamp field has already been set. And if it hasn't, then it will set it to now, which is our function in TPL, which provides the date and time. So that was all of the TPL. Now they could have just taken this little block here and pasted it in, to here, here, and here. But it's easier but since you're using that code over and over again, it was just easier to make a function. So that's just something I wanted to point out. It's just kind of a nice programming habit. Don't have to do it if you don't want to, though. All right, let's shrink the screen a little bit. Just a little bit more. Okay, good. Let's see. Oh, and the other thing I want to show off is that cool little summary stats boxes that we had at the bottom of the page. Let's go back into forms. Actually, let me go back into the designer and show that to you. In the designer, if you recall, at the bottom of here, there were these 2 sections, total tasks and type. And those are just HTML. So here's one of them, and here's the other. And if you look at how the HTML is defined, it's not actually HTML. All it is one TPL command saying, please call this function called Punchlist stats. And what it gets back from Punchlist stats is the HTML that fills out these boxes here. So let's take a quick look at Punchlist stats and see how that worked. We might also take a look at this one, which uses a function called today table. So going back into the code, and we'll take a look at all blocks. And today table was one, and Punchlist stats was the other. Let's take a look at Punchlist stats first. Let me blow this up because it's probably hard to see for you guys. All right. Basically, what you see is it's just returning a string that's got a whole bunch of HTML in it to make it nicely formatted. It creates a table using divs, and we've included spacing, we've included the labels for the headings to do complete border and all that, and then we've included just a little bit of the actual TPL to, for example, count object on hold, and a few other things, basically to fill in those statistics. So those are really, it's not, I'm not going to go through every line of code here, but if you wanted to add these little custom widgets, you can do that just by using HTML and writing a little bit of TPL on this side to fill in that HTML when it's run. All right, any questions so far? Doesn't look like it. Good. Let's move on. The last thing I want to cover is how do you get hold of this Punchlist app so you could start playing with it for yourself? And that's probably the easiest thing to demo. When you log into your Alpha Transform account, in other words, when you're at the Home tab and you're in Designer, oops, let me cancel out of here. All you're going to do is you're going to click plus to create a new form type. And this time you're going to choose Select Template instead of adding a blank form like we usually do. And we're going to scroll down to the pre-built samples, and you'll see under Construction, Project Punchlist is one of the ones that comes up. So that Project Punchlist has now been added to my thing. I already have one, so I'm going to remove it. But that's all it takes. And once it's there, you can modify it, publish it, take a look at it on your phone, and use it. So I hope that that was helpful. If there are any questions, now is your last time to type them into the questions box of the GoToWebinar control panel. Remember, you could always send questions to tfservice@alphasoftware.com. But it doesn't look like there are. Okay, wonderful. Thank you very much for attending today, and we hope to see you in our next Transform Tuesday webcast. Also, thanks, Sarah, for showing up and providing backup. Till then, take care and stay well. Bye-bye.